So we've recently realised something. Buyers don't usually message to ask questions. If they're unsure about something, they'll just simply scroll on by. So because of this, we've actually recently decided to change quite a lot of things with our listings for our products, specifically on Vinted. But I do think the things that we're changing will definitely work with other platforms like eBay, Depop, even your own website and things as well. First of all, let's talk about how we figured this out. We came to this realisation, and hopefully this will help you figure out if you're maybe making the same mistake as well. So when we were sort of looking at our listings and we're trying to figure out how to increase sales, how to figure out, why some of our items weren't selling, we kind of looked at the listings and kind of thought, like, obviously tried to put ourselves in a potential customer's shoes and think, right, what is it? Why, would we purchase this item? Is there anything in this listing that's making us ask any questions or making us unsure? Obviously, from our point of view, we would just think, oh, they'll just message if they're not sure. However, realistically, people are lazy. And I'm not saying this obviously to be mean or anything, because I'm the exact same, but generally, humans are lazy. And if they have to click an extra button, send a message, ask a question, most of the time, realistically, like being realistic, you won't, will you? Like, I'm the same. If I'm looking for something anywhere, not just on Vinted, and if I have to find out extra information by messaging or whatever, I have to really want that thing. If I'm going to do that, most of the time, I'm just going to swipe by, scroll by, and go and look for something similar somewhere else. I'll even pay more money, being honestly truthful, I'll pay more money for something where I have more confidence in it. I don't have to ask as many questions. And I do feel like Vinted and a lot of other online marketplaces are exactly the same. So some of the things that we noticed that we're maybe missing from either some of our listings or quite a lot of them actually, quite a lot of them, was measurements. So previously when we sold clothing, I did put the measurements on, like length and everything like that, because obviously we all know that different clothing brands have slightly different sizing. However, when we got our new stock, our purses and everything like that, I didn't put the measurements on. I don't know why, I just kind of thought, in my head, this is me coming from a seller point of view. And obviously I know roughly what different sizes purses are. You get, your long wallets, you get your little square ones, and you get your little coin purses. And then you get obviously more sort of male and men's wallets that are like the square size. But nowadays, there aren't lots of different sizes for purses and wallets, and obviously people have different sizes of pockets, handbags, backpacks with little slots in them, suitcases, all that kind of stuff. So obviously putting the measurements on would be very helpful. And that was something that we were definitely missing from the majority of our listings. So another thing that I feel like we were maybe missing for some of the listings was our photos. So some of them, I did notice that some of them were a bit blurry. So, and this wasn't really an issue with like sort of things like logos. It was more showing areas of the item clearly. So edges, like the zip, sort of things like that. So you can probably hear my cat running about in the background, just ran past there. So yeah, so basically unclear photos or not enough photos showing all the different angles. Now, one of the things that I noticed that I was missing, and it was so silly, is how on a wallet or a purse, I'll maybe show a little photo of what I mean with this particular area, where the coin compartment opens and then you've got the end where the leather's all kind of folded. So on a lot of purses, especially pre-owned and vintage purses, those areas can get worn quite well. So I wasn't taking photos of that area. Don't know, I just never even thought to take pictures of that area because a lot of the time it's kind of hidden. But I've noticed that since I've done that, we've actually, we'll get to the end of like what the difference is with these, with the listings, but basically to kind of give it away, I have noticed that we've had more sales and a lot less questions, which is great. And then another thing which could be making people have a little bit of questions about your listings, and it's something that I know that we're working to improve on as well, is being super duper clear about the condition. So previously, what I would kind of say would be all of our listings, because all of our items are either pre-loved or they're vintage, I would kind of say a general statement of, look, there is going to be wear, it's not going to be a brand new item. And if there was anything specific to that purse or wallet, like a zip missing or a stud missing or a particular mark, I would always say that in the description, and I would always take a photo of it. And then on top of that, I would then take a photo of obviously all the different angles of the item, trying to show the overall wear. However, I have noticed that since changing this in our listings, what I've been doing, and maybe it's a little bit overkill, but I have noticed we've increased our sales, and I do think it's because of this, is any little scuff, mark, even if it's really small, and even if you think, oh, that's just kind of general wear, because I do still think that, like say on the corners of a purse, I know if it's a vintage item, there is going to be general wear of that area. But what I've been doing is taking a picture of the whole thing, and then I've also been taking a close-up picture of the areas, just so that people have, as many views of it as possible. They can really see it up close, and again, it hopefully helps reduce any uncertainty or questions, so that they're not then thinking, right, figure out from the photos, right, how worn is that? Like she's mentioned it in the listing, but I can't really see from the photos. So it's to try and reduce any of that uncertainty from like the customer's point of view. And I do feel like since doing this, we have had a lot less questions about the wear, and we've also had more sales. I would definitely say don't worry about overly sharing the wear, because I kind of worried a little bit that if I was being overly, I suppose, negative about the purse, saying, oh, it's got wear here, it's got a tiny little mark there, it's got a little, dot there, because that's basically how particular I'm being now. I thought it would kind of put people off, because they would maybe think there was more damage than there actually was, or wear than there actually was. However, I've actually noticed the complete opposite. It hasn't put people off at all, and we've actually had a few items sold, quite a few items actually, where people have just bought them outright. They've not even tried to offer anything, and I do, try and sort of send us a lower offer. And I do think that as well is something I've noticed, that previously, if we did have interest, people would send an offer, and I do think that was maybe because they weren't sure about a few things on the listing, whether it was the measurable. They'd probably just ask if they were that interested and it was measurements, but about the condition, they were maybe just trying to give themselves a bit of a safety net. And I have noticed that there has been a lot more people just buying things outright, because we are trying to be like super duper 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 clear, like almost like overly explaining things. And yeah, so I don't see that as a negative. I don't think it will put people off, and I don't think it is making people think that there's more wear than there actually is. So yeah, I don't think I did an intro yet. So my name is Gemma, and me and my fiancé James run House of Jamz, where we sell luxury and vintage items, usually accessories, clothing, things like that, and we like to share all the different things that we are trying out with our business. So I've kind of spoken about a few of the mistakes that I noticed that we were making, and I have kind of spoken a little bit about overall why it's good to make these changes, but I thought we could talk a little bit more specifically about the exact changes we made. So the first thing is obviously photographs. So I mentioned before about taking pictures of more angles, really showing like all the edges, inside the purse, inside all the pockets, if it's a bag, all the different compartments, the zips, the handles, any straps, all that. Show as much of it as possible, all from all different angles as possible. And as I said, specifically on purses and wallets, the end part where the leather folds is also a key area that we were kind of forgetting. So definitely showing all your different photographs, making sure that the lighting's really good. So some of the photos that we have up even now, we actually took them in the winter, and it was in a different flat from ours because we were getting this place renovated. Now we're really lucky in this flat, we have really good light, and I was really missing it when I was taking these pictures. I was really struggling to find places that had good light. So some areas it was actually too bright. So some of the photos I feel like are just too bright, and I can't get them to be a bit more, like, I suppose, less exposed. So some of our photos are too bright, and then some of them were too dark, because again, we're really struggling to find areas to take pictures of things. So now that we're kind of back in our normal flat, I can use the areas that I know that have good light. So good natural light, not too bright, not too shadowy or dark, making sure that it's natural light as much as possible as well, not artificial light. And then also making sure that our background is consistent. So we do try, I think a lot of our older pictures were all taken on sort of real wood background, and in again these different flats we were in, we had different backgrounds for different items, which was a bit annoying because it made our shop look less consistent. So we're kind of gradually working our way through and now taking new pictures all with the same background. So that's something else that we've changed, and I do think that the photos look a lot better. And then another thing that we've changed, which I have mentioned in the previous video, is trying to take a picture of, you say, your purse, your wallet or your bag with you holding it. So previously, I would just take photos of front, back, all the different angles of the purse just on its own, or the item, the bag, just on its own. So what I've been doing is actually taking a photograph of me holding it so that people can see the scale of what it looks like against your hand. So it just helps them imagine what it's going to be like for them to use it, even though it's not you modelling it. Like, you don't need to be in the picture, but even if you're just holding the item or holding it against your body, like if it's a bag and you can maybe get a photo of it just against that area of your body, it just really helps people imagine what it's going to look like on them. And again, that's something else that helps take away any like uncertainties that they might have. So measurements is another thing that we added to our listings, and as I said, we're kind of gradually working our way through to add them to everything. So for a purse, I would add the length and the width. If it's a bag, you might want to add like the thickness, the depth as well. Obviously, if it's clothing, you're going to be adding like the pit to pit or chest measurement, the length, maybe across the shoulders. If it's trousers, you're going to do the waist and the inseam, maybe the the outer sort of length as well. I'm trying to think of anything else. But yeah, just any measurements that you would want to know would probably be, helpful. Although, even though we put the measurements in our listings, we've actually still had like, I think 3 people in this past week ask for the measurements, and they've and it's like, it's so funny because it's like they've messaged, we've actually been chatting about it, and then they'll ask the measurements, and I'm like, you'd think that through this conversation they would be looking at the listing, looking at description, looking at the photos, and maybe have realised there's measurements there. But we all know that a lot of people don't read the description fully. So yeah, even if you do put the measurements in, you'll probably still get questions about it. So yeah, definitely the measurements. And as I mentioned before, being really particular about the condition. So don't just say an overall, it's used, it's got a bit of wear, or it's pre-loved or whatever. I mean, that might work for some things if there's not really anything. What I usually do, if there's not really anything, any flaws or any scratches or anything, I will just say it's a vintage item, it is pre-loved, so it has been worn, it's not brand new. But I'll usually say that for an item that doesn't really have any particular flaws on it, because I do want to share that it is, that it is worn, it's not like a brand new thing. But so yeah, any obviously major things like scratches, missing bits, zips, all that kind of stuff, definitely point that out and take a photo of it and show it. But if there is any areas that you think that's got a little bit of wear on it, that corner has got a bit of a scuff on it, point them out, almost overly explain it, because then as well, that if they're not happy with the condition and they get the item and maybe they haven't read the description, that will then obviously back you up, and as well if you are taking photos of those areas. But in my experience, it has actually helped people have less questions, and they're still really keen to buy, if they're interested. I think customers really appreciate you being quite upfront with them. So next we're going to kind of talk a little bit about why this is, like why we decided to make all these changes to our listings, and why it's maybe a good idea if you are selling things online to really look at your listings as well and to see if these are things that you could improve on. And it's really, I find it really interesting, it's almost like the psychology behind it of the buy-in, and I know that I'm totally guilty of this. So I don't know about you, but if you're ever looking for something online, or even trying to get something to work, or you're searching for something, if it's too tricky, you have to search too far, you have to answer too many questions, or there's too many choices, I know for me, I just scroll right past, or I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered with that. And I know that, a lot of customers, when they're looking for things, are exactly the same. So if they're looking at your item, and if you don't have the measurements, if they can't tell what the colour is because the pictures are a little bit funny, if they can't tell if it's authentic because the pictures are blurry and you don't say anywhere it's authentic, if they can't really tell what the condition is like clearly, chances are they're just going to scroll past because they can't be bothered asking. They're just going to go and find another item somewhere else that has all that information so that they can just buy it. So one of the things that I've figured out is that people buy things when it's easy. So if they look at your item, they get all the information they want, they don't have to ask any questions, and it's a price they like, they're just going to buy it. So you want to make it an absolute obvious choice that your item is the right one to buy. And I think I mentioned before that what was the psychology sort of thing? I can't remember the name of it. It's to do with if there's too many sort of things in the way, too many barriers, too many questions, too many sort of friction, people just won't buy. You know what I mean? If there's too many questions, there's too many things getting in the way, it'll actually just stop them from buying. You want to try and reduce that friction as much as possible. So yeah, so people buy things when it's easy for them and not when it's perfect. So don't worry about oversharing, the condition. What you want to do is you want to deter the wrong customer. You don't want to attract them. You want to get them to decide pretty quickly, right, this isn't the item for me, it's too worn, it's not the right size, it's not the right colour, whatever, and you want rid of them. You want them to move on, but then that's going to help you attract the right people. So yeah, I think it's even down to the whole thing when you are trying to maybe market things. And I suppose that's saying if you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody, and you want to be trying to find that one perfect customer. You don't want to be trying to confuse a whole load of people who are not completely sure if the item is right. And then you've also got the risk that, one, you might come across that you're being a little bit, that you're not really trustworthy because you're not being upfront with the sizing or the condition or the colour or the photos or whatever, and it might give the wrong impression to potential customers. They might think you're trying to hide something. Hopefully not though, and obviously that's not going to be I would hope not anybody's intention, but that could give the wrong impression to customers. And then obviously you've got the other story where you're just going to confuse a whole load of people because they're going to look at your thing and then they're going to think, well, I think it's kind of what I'm looking for, but I'm not totally sure. And then they just end up getting confused and then don't buy anything. So yeah, what you want to be doing is not confusing people. You want to be trying to find that one perfect customer for your item, which is going to mean deterring the wrong people. So deterring people that don't want something that's maybe vintage or pre-loved or that particular colour, or people that are wanting something that's maybe like brand new. You want to get rid of those customers because as they buy from you as well and then they receive the item and they're not happy with it, then you could end up getting like a bad review or bad feedback and they won't return. Whereas if you get somebody who finds your item, figures out pretty quickly it's exactly what they're looking for, you've answered all their questions, they're your perfect customer, they're going to be really happy with the item, they're probably going to be a returning customer, and you're probably going to get nice feedback and nice reviews from them. So now I kind of want to share the results of our, the little changes we have. I'm saying little changes, it has been quite a little bit of work, but the changes we've been making. So we've kind of been doing it the past 3 weeks, I want to say, and I am just taking my time. We're not rushing to do it. So every week what I've been doing is picking out, say, between 5 and 7 items, and I've been retaking the pictures in the way that I've described. I've been taking down all the old listings because they're not good enough, and what I've been doing is relisting them as new items on Vinted with new photographs. So, and obviously a new description with the measurements and all the condition details and everything like that. And I have to say that every week that we have listed some like these new items, we've sold, I would say, out of the sort of 5 to 7 items, we've actually sold half of them, which before our sales had gotten really quiet. I think I mentioned that previously. I don't know if it was because of our listings or if it was because of the time of year, but had noticed that our sales had dropped quite a bit. But since we've been doing this and we have been, making all these changes, we have been making quite a few more sales, and we have had a lot less questions about the sizing, the condition. We have had a lot less cheeky offers. We've had people just buying things outright because obviously the price is right, they've got all the information they need, which has been great. I've also noticed as well that it's just an easier process because we know exactly what we need to do for each listing, and it's just made the things a lot more streamlined, a lot quicker. And for me personally, I actually feel a lot more confident when I'm selling things because I know that I've put all the information possible in the listing, whether it's the measurements, the condition, whatever. So I know that the chances of our customer being happy with the item is a lot higher. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've not, touch wood, we've not had many customers that have really had issues. A couple of times I've maybe had issues with, I think, not maybe realising it's been vintage, even though it has been in the listing. And again, that could be our fault because we've maybe not been super duper clear about it. But hopefully now that we are including all these details, and obviously the size and things as well, like people aren't then receiving it and thinking, oh, that's too big, that's too small. Like, I feel like we're a lot more confident when we are selling things that our customers are going to be really happy with what they're receiving, because it's exactly what they've expected. So you might be asking as well, is it worth it? Is it worth potentially retaking photographs of, you know, a lot of your items? And I have to say that so far for us it has been. Obviously it's changed the fact that these items weren't selling and now they are. And I think, I'm just trying to think of how long it actually takes me. I think for taking photographs for about maybe 5 to 6 items, it takes like maybe an hour, I would say. What I usually do as well is I measure and take a picture of me measuring, so then I can upload that picture of the measurement if I've got enough photo spaces. But also it means that when I'm listing, I can just look at the measurement on the photo, and it just makes things a little bit quicker rather than having to measure separately when I'm listing and messing about with measuring tapes and stuff like that. So that's just like an easier way of doing it. However, yeah, I would say that, so yeah, an hour of my time, I would say, taking the pictures, but then obviously you've got the listing process. So I would say probably a couple of hours, I would say, for doing between 5 and 7 items, taking the photos, listing the items. Now obviously it totally depends on what you're selling, what prices you're selling things for. However, a lot of our purses are selling for roughly £20, £25. However, we do have a few Gucci pieces that are obviously a bit more expensive. So if we were selling a Gucci piece, which is going for say 50, and then a few Coach pieces, like for example, I listed a few new things, 5 things I think, just a couple of days ago, and we've already sold 3 or 4 of them, 3 of them I think, and one of them was a Gucci purse which was 50, and then a couple of Coach pieces, so you're talking like nearly £100. So that's £100 for 2 hours work. And obviously that's just the listings that I did this week. I'm kind of hoping that these listings will maybe get a little bit more traction over the next couple of weeks and will hopefully sell. So I do think it's worth it. However, probably the best thing to do would be do this in the first place, which is obviously something that, you know, we should have done. But yeah, I think it is worth doing this in the first place, and then it means you don't have to redo it. I would say for us anyway, it has definitely been worth that little bit extra time to get these items sold, especially when it is higher ticket items, like, you know, designer pieces. So before we go ahead and wrap up, what is one thing in a listing of an item, whether it's vintage on eBay or whatever, that immediately puts you off buying it, that immediately makes you swipe past? I would love to hear this in the comments, because some of these just make me laugh, and some of them would actually might be a little bit surprising as well. We can maybe have a little chat about that in a future video, because some of us might be doing these things and not even realise. So if you found this video useful or interesting, make sure and subscribe, turn the notification bell for any of our future videos, and then we'll see you in our next one.